it's a plot to drop the IQ. Fighting amongst each other over rumors that don't like you. Prefer us trapped in melancholy with the wood ones of holly. Suggestions that obliterate to camouflage the folly. Attempted mental robbery, executed sloppily. The hypocrisy, this mockery, and block the talk with me. Put the hands up to touch the Akasha, cause you know deep down there's something bigger than your wallet.
Sweet eternal balance of all that is good, true, and beautiful, friends. Welcome back to Rogue Soul, where tonight is the winning report, and we will remember how we are winners and how to win. We always look at things critically with logic, with assessment. We take our time to reflect, to consider our own biases, to consider our own things. Wow, I never really trip over my words. I think people think that I script these shows because I so rarely do, but no, I don't. It's all free flow, freestyle, 100% of the time all the way through. But yeah, if we have our own predispositions, then we tend to look at things through our bubble and through our lens, and that doesn't help. So we always aim to deconstruct that here on Rogue Soul, as well as remember our spiritual connection, which is all that matters, the only thing that's eternal, the only thing that lasts, and everything else is cool. It's cool. I like being here. I like this place. I like Earth. I like living. It's awesome. And it isn't the top. It isn't the best. It isn't the thing, right? We're here doing a thing, but it isn't the thing. So we remember that. That makes us winners as well. And we look at the big show, right? We deconstruct the show that we are being shown, all the propaganda that goes along with it. We hope, therefore, to end with something that is at least a thoughtful reflection on what we are shown, if nothing better. So let's do it. We'll start now and we'll jump into it. Roguesoul.org is the place where I have everything I do, all of my books, my one-on-one sessions, my shop full of my orgone. All of it is here. You can book a session with me, schedule a session. You can read the testimony of those who have worked with me over the years. So many powerful testimonies there. It's nice to read through those, especially if you have been wondering if you've been wanting a life path tarot reading, a past life tarot reading, a sound healing, or any of my spiritual services, then that can be nice to help you decide if that's what is best for you. You can also look into the favorite things tab. I love going to the favorite things tab because I use the affiliate links and they help me. Anytime you use these affiliate links, it gives me a little boost. Chemical-free body, true sidereal astrology, organic hemp society. These are all things that I use in my life that I find help me to live in more alignment with my highest soul, heart, mind, and body. AquaCure hydrogen therapy. George Weissman's been on the show so many times telling us about the miracle of hydrogen therapy, doTERRA essential oils, and LMNT. You know what? I'm actually going to take that one off. I found out they have stevia. So I don't use stevia anymore because it's a hormone disruptor. So that's going to go away. So I only keep things here that I actually use and find to be helpful. And that's no longer helpful. So I'm glad I remembered it by going to the favorite things tab of Rogue Soul. But anytime you're going to order any of these things, I appreciate it because it is one really beautiful way to support the show, support everything I do. So that is all here in the shop. You can find the books, the trilogy, and the channeled source messages. The trilogy is so fun. If you're a fiction lover, you like to read. My God, if you haven't checked it out yet, you are missing out. Go check out that. It's also, all the books are available on Audible, on Amazon, on Barnes & Noble. Any of the ways you like to listen or read, you can grab those. And when you get them from me, they just come with an inscription, a channeled message from your spiritual guides and allies. So that is that. It's all at roguesoul.org. Also, come be a supporter and subscriber at rogueways.substack.com. You get access to channeled messages like, "Are you a secret mass murderer?" And you do that if you're a paid supporter. If you're a free subscriber, you get articles and poems like "Make Meaning," "A Letter from God to You," "No Pacifist Spiritual Leaders." I write articles and all kinds of things here, often on health and wellness, society, philosophy, history, all the things that interest me. And so this is a good place to get those. And again, if you're a paid subscriber there, you do get the channeled messages from the spiritual ancestors, which improve your life for the better. Anytime you connect with true channeled material, it is healing you and uplifting you. And so it's good to do. So I love to share that with you all there on rogueways.substack.com. Sign up now, whether for free or paid. Both are great. Thank you for all of the support and love. And we'll start here with these hurricanes. There was two hurricanes forming, one in the Gulf of America and one off the eastern coast of Florida. And it is hurricane season, but we got the Fujiwara effect. Instead of two hurricanes potentially making landfall, the two hurricanes repelled one another and seem to have then therefore allowed everyone to have dodged that bullet. So I've called that a huge win right off the bat. I love it. I know, anytime we see a huge weather system that could have potentially been, really destructive and horrible, and it doesn't make landfall and it isn't destructive and horrible, nobody talks about weather engineering. Nobody talks about weather engineering when we escape the scathing. They only talk about it when we don't. And I will say, absolutely, weather engineering is happening. That's not even a question. It's not a conspiracy. It's absolute fact. So there's no way around it. It's not something many people know. It seems to be hidden with much effort, but it is a fact. And it is also very intriguing that there are so many times where it does seem that engineering was used to manipulate pre-existing storms to make them either stronger or to head in a certain direction, and to therefore make certain properties more easily bought out by the BlackRocks and the Vanguards of the world. So, it's worth always wondering, but I just like to point out how, again, we can be really myopic if we're not careful, and we can forget. So, did weather engineering save us from these hurricanes, or do hurricanes just sometimes happen? Yeah, they just sometimes happen. So that's good. We'll take the win. It's huge. But a lot of intense energy coming in. And remember, in this geomagnetic excursion that most people aren't talking about and aren't aware of, and that you're probably not going to hear on the mainstream stream ever, but you will hear about here, and you have been for 4 years now. This geomagnetic excursion is causing bigger storms, is causing more frequent storms, is causing higher energy to come into the Earth system. So our magnetosphere is weakening. The sun is spitting out extra intense magnetic electric energy in all sorts of wavelengths. And that is coming into the system. And no matter how you suss it out, like, the energy has to go somewhere. It has to be integrated into the system when the magnetosphere isn't repelling it. And so we're integrating all of that. And so we get storms, we get earthquakes, we get auroras, like the ones you see on your screen right now. These are in St. Petersburg, and they went all the way to Siberia. It's not abnormal there, but they're quite intense and bright. Again, not too abnormal there, but really, really beautiful. But we also saw them much lower this week. The solar storms have been pretty intense this past week. And so people who are especially using the long exposure of photography have been able to take some of those stunning images again, even down into the States. And so we're seeing, again, some bigger storms, some more energy coming in. And so we might see, and I meant solar storms when I was saying that. And so we might see some weather related storms as well because of this, or earthquakes or the like. And as this geomagnetic excursion continues, we may see more and more of that. So just a reminder, we're still in it. It's still going. Sometimes takes a little pause, sometimes doesn't. Speaking of those geomagnetic excursions, this picture, by the way, is completely not even close to how it actually goes. The North Pole, anyways, the magnetosphere seems to tilt a little bit more directly towards the sun. But anyways, scientists have found a direct link between solar storms and heart attacks in an alarming new study. And this is just from, this year. Apparently they have been studying this and found that with more solar storms, with more energy coming into the Earth system, there are more heart attacks. This is only surprising if you've never thought about things much. If you understand life and you understand electromagnetics, then you would just say, duh, of course it does. Our hearts are electric and magnetic. The vortex under our hearts is magnetic. The hearts themselves are electric. We're an electric being. We have an electric field around us. So does the Earth. Just like the Earth, we have that. Radiation damages living things. To some extent, it can also, uplift them. The sun gives life, that's a form of radiation. Light gives life. But too much of it in the wrong amounts at the wrong times, and when the field around a thing is weakened, like our magnetosphere, then it can harm. 5G can harm. Wi-Fi can harm. All forms of radiation that aren't, within a certain range and in a sort of natural amount can be harmful to biological life. That's all life. By saying biological life is redundant, it just means life, all cells. That means you, that means little ants, that means, giant bears, trees, all of it. So they're like, oh, wow, more heart attacks when there's solar storms. I'm like, yes, I absolutely, if you would have told us all to guess and we thought about it for 3 seconds, we would say, of course, there's more heart attacks during solar storms. So now scientists told you could have known, but now you know extra. So is it a win or not? It's just true. It's just a thing. It's both. It's just neutral. Black swan is banned from town and exiled 150 miles away. Poor black swan. Talk about the absolute symbol. Like this is what black swan, people talk about black swan events as in like 1 in a million, like all the right conditions came together to create usually a negative situation. Because black swans are rare, black ducks are rare, the miscolored misfits are less common. But we also talk about black swan almost like a black sheep, right? The one that everyone mocks, the one that everyone dismisses, the one that gets excommunicated. And this black swan is no different. He was nicknamed Reggie, and he's been exiled 150 miles from Stratford-upon-Avon, which I'm, somewhere in the UK, after terrorizing tourists and attempting to drown other swans. Town swan warden Cyril Bennis. They have a town swan warden. How adorable. That's already a win. So cute. Said that capturing Reggie, who he calls Mr. Terminator, had to be done, and that the mischievous bird had attitude, capturing local attention for months. He noted that other swans seemed to respect Reggie as he swam through the water. Well, yeah, if he's a tyrant, they would at least fear him. If you want to call it respect, call it respect. Reggie got the respect he deserved, I guess. And so he's caused an enormous amount of trouble. He's been taken 150 miles away. He's just going to cause trouble wherever he goes. So hopefully those swans are ready to deal with Reggie. So this is birds at their best. That's adorable. Mr. Terminator, the black swan, has been exiled. I bet he doesn't think it's a win, but we'll see. Maybe it is. Maybe he'll have a happier life there. Unless you didn't need more bad news, Chelsea Clinton launched a podcast targeting public health misinformation. Remember when I taught you that public health is neurolinguistic programming? Public health, the phrase itself, doesn't mean anything. It is used to create very specific responses in you. It's used to preempt the consideration that you might have for yourself in order that you will give away rights for the community, the supposed community. For the welfare of others, you will abrogate your own needs. That's what that is. It's a psychopathic, narcissistic programming. And it is weaponized language. So public health misinformation is double programming. There is no such thing as public health misinformation because public health doesn't actually exist. There is no health of the public. If you were actually going to talk about the health of the public, what you would be talking about is whether or not a community of people was able to be a community of people together outside of their private life. That's it. So you'd be talking about civics, basically, right? Your community, your civics, that would be public health. Otherwise, you're not talking about it. There is no such thing. You can't measure it. You can't even define it. The health of an organism is the health of an organism. If you're talking about something public, you're talking about civic engagement. So in that case, our public health throughout the entirety of COVID was horrible because we were prevented from even being civic, from being engaged publicly, from being public. We had to stay at home, right? So these people are very confused. They're not confused, though. They're doing this on purpose. And now Chelsea Clinton is spearheading the programming, spearheading the abrogation of your ability to think for yourself, act for yourself, and do for yourself, in creating a podcast that targets the supposed misinformation, public health. It's a meaningless set of words. And what it really is we'll tell you what to think, and we'll do it with our best propaganda efforts so far. So what she's doing is interviewing quote unquote experts. And remember that experts is almost as meaningless in this day and age. You can graduate from a university and have a PhD and still have a low IQ and not be good at anything. Didn't used to be the case. Now it is. Now it's absolutely true that you can have any level of degree that we confer upon people and not be able to do your job and not know what you're talking about and have a low IQ and not have good reasoning skills. It's 100% true now. You can buy a degree essentially, and depending on where you're going, especially, you will at the very worst not have learned anything and just jump through hoops, especially like online education degrees and or those types of programs. But even if you go to what were once reputable universities, you're often just programmed with dogmatic propaganda. You don't have a huge plethora of ideas contending against one another. You don't have an equal arena for all ideas to interact and to see and evaluate which ones are actually good, true, and beautiful. You just have propaganda and dogma being shoved down your throat so that you can regurgitate it, so you can prove you're a good little boy or girl and get your degree. So what are experts now? What's whoever is in power says is an expert. And essentially it is whoever is in power's friends or people who will say what they want in order to have and gain and completely keep all the power they've already made. So that's who she's interviewing. People who are towing the line, industry stooges, embedded agents for sure are also going to be part of it. For example, she's never going to interview the experts who disagree with the COVID narrative. She's never going to interview the experts that point out all the flaws in, the 6 feet, radius, the 2 weeks to curve the whatever, like none of that stuff. She's not going to poke into that. She's going to tell you that raw milk will kill you, that polio was cured by vaccines, all of the same lies that we've been told. She's going to reinforce it with supposed experts. So if you needed more, there it is. Not a win for anyone, except the people who can see through it. It might be quite entertaining to deconstruct if you can, right? A good thought experiment. Oh, but we'll move on. Tens of thousands protest public spending cuts across France. There's some big protests going on there. It's not just the public spending cuts. It's also the weaponized immigration. People are sick of having had all of these people just shoved into their communities without infrastructure, without support, taking resources that would have otherwise been for everyone else who was already there. And then also have a crumbling infrastructure and also have a government that is proposing austerity and cuts, at the same time. That's what is actually going on. So they're saying it's about the austerity. They're saying it's about the unhappiness with the current government. But what it really is that stressing of resources and that very intentional weaponized immigration that has brought people to their knees in a way. They're desperate for what to do. So not a good situation in France. Good for people that they're doing what they feel like is standing up for themselves. Is it going to result in real change? We can hope so, right? We can hope they get someone in who is actually aware of those exact problems and empowered to fix them. Not hard to fix, actually. Not hard to fix. So good luck to them. Godspeed for the people of France. Trump has declared drug cartels operating in the Caribbean unlawful combatants. So he's, doing the same thing we saw in like the Bush era and some other periods where we don't really want to declare a war. So instead we use a bunch of other weird warlike legalese that makes it technically legal for us to act, but also doesn't, require Congress, or all the same tricks are being used here against what is supposed to be drug cartels operating in the Caribbean, which honestly, I don't know that they're not, right? And I would actually support the ending of that. It's a massive amount of human misery that goes into drug cartels, drug trafficking, and human trafficking. So if we're kind of like waging war on that, and that's what's actually happening, I'm all for it, and I call it a win. It is unfortunate when someone won't stop attacking you, and so you have to defend yourself with lethal force. It's not what anyone really wants to do. And yet it's what you sometimes have to do. And so if that is the case, I would say it's a win. If it's not, it's some weird excuse to just be blowing up random boats. Of course, that would be a problem. I haven't seen any evidence that it isn't drug cartels that are being targeted. So I don't know, I don't know. And if you're, again, if you have something that sheds more light on that, then feel free to share it with me. But I can't find anything that indicates it's not cartels. So I'm for it ostensibly. We'll call it a win. Nigerian Christians are afraid to gather as attacks by Islamist herders mount. Islamist herders, they're calling them. So if you didn't know, Islam is by far the most violent and oppressive and hate-filled religion on earth. And that is not to say that all Muslims are. In fact, most westernized Muslims are fantastic people, and their version of Islam is not horrible. But especially in Africa, much of the Middle East, and Pseudo-Asia, there are pretty big problems with this. And now with the weaponized immigration, we're seeing it also move throughout Europe. So weaponized immigration is a tool for radical Islam to continue its holy war. And the holy war waged by Islam is terrible. And it's been going on for thousands of years. And so, I always highlight this because we're still in a place and time where people don't know that Islam is so violent and so awful that they will go into entire villages, towns, and cities and kill everybody who isn't already Muslim or won't convert on the spot. They will rape and murder. And if people are lucky, they might get away, but they won't leave anyone alive. It's horrible. And again, it's been going on forever. In fact, a lot of the immigration to the United States prior to the most recent weaponized immigration push were people who were fleeing Muslim war. Christians and people who wouldn't convert were fleeing Muslims. So it's been the most effective religion in that way. And though a lot of people still deeply delusionally say, and it's not even that they're delusional, it's that they were programmed with it and they didn't have access to the information that would prove them wrong, people will still say Christianity is the most violent religion on earth throughout history. And it's so blatantly not true. But I didn't learn it until I was a 30-something. Really late. And on accident. And it should be known. It should be known that Christians are the most targeted, the most persecuted, the most murdered religion on earth, and that Islam, and Muslims are the most violent on earth. And so there's been hundreds of thousands of people murdered in Africa for Christianity just since like 2000, for example. The year 2000. Before that, it was, there was still going on. I don't know if we counted or cared, because again, there's been this huge programming push in the United States to get people to hate Christianity. And I don't care if you hate Christianity or not, just don't hate it for that reason, because that's not true and makes you look ignorant. And hate it for some other reason if you need to. That's cool. But at least know that it's the most persecuted, most, susceptible to religious attack and murder. And it has been that way for our whole lives and beyond. If you're listening to this, it's been that way for your whole life and beyond. If you're alive in the world today, it's been that way for your whole life. But you're not allowed to talk about it or know about it. So I'll highlight that is again happening in Nigeria now. It kind of comes in waves, and there's a massive wave going on now. It's very disturbing. Torture, murder, rape, and worse. So that's in Nigeria. Not a win. Pray for the people of Africa that they get a choice of how to live their life, whether they want to be Christians or atheists or secular, right? Or if they want to be Muslim, cool. Stop killing people for it. That'd be great. That'd be great. In further bad news, Europe is replacing passport stamps with fingerprint and face scans. Here's what travelers should know. So you don't have the option to opt out of this. So, and I'm, by the way, I have loved in my life having a passport that I get to travel and get the stamps, and I can look back at it and say, oh, look at all these places. It's so cool. And now I have to scan my eyes and my face and my whatever to get around. And you're doing this for what? For what? I mean, they're pretending that it just has to be done for security. Like, we could have said, problem, reaction, solution, Hegelian dialectic, you weaponized immigration, you brought all these people in, and the clear answer to that problem you created was going to be digital IDs and biometrics and this thing, but they haven't even strung that together eloquently. They're just like, here's a bunch of immigrants, and then, oh, by the way, here's some things. It's not because of the immigrants, because we're still getting more immigrants in, and we're not done with that yet because we haven't destroyed you fast enough, but we are also behind schedule and trying to roll out this digital ID, so we're just going to do it, and you're just going to do it. And it's really messy. It feels a lot like COVID in that it's too soon, too much too soon. And instead of working, it's going to wake a bunch of people up and cause a lot more resistance than they were ready for. And there's already massive unrest, massive, signatures and talk and chatter, and people aren't going along with this easily. So although they're suddenly rolling this out hot and heavy, there is not a lot of success built into it, and there's not a lot of success in the air around it. So I'll count that as a win. I'll count their, faulty, poorly rolled out plan a win for us. But let's stay vigilant about this technocracy as it continues, because they're not the only ones. That's the EU in general, but Swiss voters have narrowly approved a plan for electronic ID cards. Again, it's possible that is real. It's possible that that election was falsified and people really don't want it. In general, most people in general around the world don't want this. So it is weird that Swiss voters first rejected this more than once and now suddenly are just barely passing it. So I don't know for sure either if they're going to just accept it. But again, we see this being pushed out, especially in Europe, and on a faster, kind of sudden track than I would have expected, right? Which again is sort of ringing back to COVID. I was like, oh, Agenda 2021 just didn't even happen. That's cool. And then all of a sudden they were like, blam. And I was like, whoa, sudden force. And it worked, unfortunately. It also worked to wake up mass amounts of people and backfired on them, which is a huge win. And I think this will too. So let's keep that in our hearts and minds and continue to watch for that technocracy. And finally, in the UK, Starmer, the absolute WEF pansy, is rolling out digital IDs, which could leave the UK with China-style social credit systems. Yeah, so at least we're talking about it with this language, and at least we're seeing it for what it is, and at least the people of the UK have overwhelmingly rejected this so far, even though they're dealing with all the chaos of weaponized immigration, even though they're experiencing all these massive increases in arsons, in beatings, in murders, in rapes that are almost exclusively immigrant crimes. Even though they're dealing with that, they still won't roll over for this. And that is a huge win. When people are so awake that they will not accept the proposed solution for this Hegelian scheme, that's amazing. So we can celebrate this heightened consciousness the world seems to have downloaded in the last few years, and we can keep it going. And just remember that anytime it seems like they're pushing forward or seeming to win with their schemes and their, totalitarianism, their one world government, their technocracy of enslavement, just remember the people who are not giving into that and have not given in easily. And that is heartening. So I'm very impressed with that. Again, I think it's too much too soon. I think they thought people would be more ready or be clamoring for it. And all of a sudden they're just pushing it without that. And that just doesn't work. So, I'll call it a win. I think it's pretty cool. I'm happy with it. RFK also has been speaking out against the digital ID in the United States, right? There's been talk of it here. There's been talk of, you have to get your real ID. This has been going back and forth for years. And like I've said before, so every time they're like, you've got to have your real ID or you can't fly. It just doesn't happen. because thousands of people just show up without it, and they're like, oh, we can't just like, screw all these flights and all these airlines and whatever, and so I guess we just have to find a way, and then it just doesn't work, right? And that keeps happening. So it's very cool that keeps happening. RFK is reminding us, any power, he says, any power we cede to government, he says, we never get back. He's reminding us, and people really hate him. People on all sides really hate him. They're like, he's a lifetime actor and he's done this and this wrong and all of this. And I'm like, you can't even see the good he's done. I mean, like, criticize him for sure for his failures, right? I remember him saying some things and doing some things that seemed to be in alignment with the technocracy, for example. And so I called him out on it. And now I hear him talking like this. And he's like, don't comply with digital IDs. Don't go down that path. Don't give the government this power that they'll never cede back to you. You have to remember that, and you have to see this trap because it leads to totalitarianism. It leads to the lack of your freedom. I'm like, man, it sucks that everybody hates him on all sides, because this is exactly what people need to hear and remember. But again, I think a lot of people are awake to that. I think that is a strong piece of the human consciousness right now, is to resist that. And so even again, if it seems to move forward, we have to remember there is such a huge push by people to stay connected to what's natural, what's real, what's direct, what's analog, and what's decentralized. And people really know that and feel that in their heart. So that's a beautiful win. And RFK Jr. is doing a win. He's doing a win here, even though he sometimes doesn't. This is hilarious and, I don't know, beautiful, I guess, if you're into it. Nepal chooses a 2-year-old girl as the new living goddess. Can imagine being 2 and feeling worship from people. Must be quite strange. And so what happens is, Aryatara Shakya was chosen as Nepal's new living goddess during the Indra Jatra festival. This selection occurs in a culture where Kumaris, or virgin goddesses, are revered by both Hindus and Buddhists. Aryatara replaces the incumbent Kumari, transitioning her life at the temple palace in Kathmandu. Now, the outgoing human goddess is just merely mortal again. She was a goddess, she was a virgin, but when you come of age, or go through your transformation, have your period or something, I don't know, whatever it is, then you are no longer the living goddess, and now a new one is chosen. So here's the new one. So congratulations to them and to her. May they all live prosperous, beautiful lives. We'll call it a win. Climate change paganism is on full display. Pope Leo blessed a block of ice in some kind of a weird, like, children's play is what it looks like. It's like a dark, menacing, but sort of bright and well-lit children's play. And he blessed a block of ice. The blessing of the waters by Pope Leo XIV at today's Raising Hope for Climate Justice International Conference at Castel Gandolfo occurred. So, they're always doing weird rituals and stuff. And I don't know if this is that or if it's just them being goofy. Their religion of climate, though, is quite disconcerting. And it's pretty disappointing that a world religious leader is just so bought and sold into it. But yeah, that's what he's doing with his time as a religious leader. So speaking of climate, Energy Department returns $13 billion in unobligated wasteful spending to American taxpayers. This is September 24th. I don't know why no one's talking about this. This seems like a pretty big deal. $13 billion is being returned to taxpayers. They were initially appropriated to advance the previous administration's wasteful green new scam agenda. This is from the energy.gov webpage itself, and that is exactly word for word how it was described. So this was September 24th that this went down about a week ago. And so it's going to return more than $13 billion in funds. I don't know how. Like, are we going to get a check? I'm not sure. It doesn't really say. By returning these funds to the American taxpayer, the Trump administration is affirming its commitment to advancing more affordable, reliable, and secure American energy and being more responsible stewards of taxpayer dollars. I call it a win. It'd be cool if, I mean, we get some of that or whatever. That'd be neat. I don't know how much that works out to if there's 350 million of us, but this is something. And so take it for sure. But yeah, I hope also what I would like to see is, instead of it being returned necessarily, I mean, that's cool too, but maybe put it into those micronuclear reactors. So every city has one, right? And everywhere has its own energy infrastructure, deeply protected. And now we won't have energy bills anymore, especially because we're going to talk about, coming up later in the show, something that's sapping all of our money and increasing our energy bills, which could be greatly served by having those micronuclear reactors, which we already have the technology for. And we also have, tesselators and all kinds of like fusion, and we could do anything we wanted at this point. We could transform all of human civilization easily. It's not that we don't have the money. It's not that we don't have the time. It's not that we don't have the technology. It's that we don't have the unity of purpose, and we have all this distraction and all of this, aim for centralizing power in the world. And that's what's our problem. So we have virtually free to / free energy at our fingertips, and it would unleash the world into a golden age of creativity and wonder and beauty. And instead, we're doing all of this. So keep your eye on that prize, and hopefully we'll get some of that coming down the pike here, sometime, and maybe it's about 8 years out. We'll see. Primatologist Jane Goodall has died. I loved Jane Goodall's work. I loved her conservation efforts. I loved how many gorillas and chimpanzees and primates she saved. I loved how she brought that to the world's eye, that our attention on animals and nature is actually part of what does protect it. We can't protect something we're not aware of and don't care about. I love all of that about her. She did have some of the, like the climate dogma and some of that stuff, and, sort of the population eugenics sort of thing going on. It is easy to have that when you are so deep into conservation work. It's easy to have that perspective. So I forgive her for that. She meant well. I've never met anyone. I was talking to Bruce Fenton, friend of the show, Charlie Robinson, co-host on Day Zero. They were both talking about, how evil she, or how dark, or how, a lot of her ideas and thoughts were so horrible. And I was saying, it's true, I don't disagree, but I just want to point out, like, there isn't anyone pure, or there isn't anyone you can point to who hasn't done something horrible and something great. It's like 100% of humans have good and bad in them. So it's true of every human who ever has been and ever will be. And so until you ascend to the ascended master point, in which case maybe you are all good. Or maybe you descend into the like absolute, complete and total possession, demonic possession. So God forbid, maybe you're 100% bad, but it is exceptionally rare to not be a mix of the things. So I'll honor her for the good she did, and I enjoyed her. I got to see her in person, hear her talk, and it was pretty moving for a young person. And so she signed my book, or we talked or shook hands. I don't really remember. I was quite young, but it was pretty cool for me. And was she responsible for Gorillas in the Mix? Do you guys remember that? There was the movie Gorillas in the Mist, and then there was like the not really connected, but riding on the waves of Gorillas in the Mist. There was Gorillas in the Mix, and it was like a sound. It was all the sounds of the jungle, but it was made into like popular songs. Dude, it was rad. And if you didn't have that when you were 11, I'm sorry for you, because it was my favorite. But anyways, Gorillas in the Mix. So thanks, Jane Goodall. Have a good time in heaven or wherever you feel like you are. The government has officially shut down as of yesterday. The nation erupts in celebration as the government shuts down, the Babylon Bee says. So obviously not what's happened, but it is unfortunate, like the military and other people won't get paid and will be expected to work anyway, and that's not fair. And so I would always hope that they are taken care of, and they'll get their back pay and stuff, so it'll be okay when it comes back together. And so basically it doesn't matter. I guess some of the national parks, or maybe all of them, closed down, and that's really, really sad. Actually, if someone were coming from like some other country and they were going to go to Zion and it's closed because of this, like that would ruin maybe a large portion of your life. Like you maybe saved up for that, and that was like a big deal. That sucks. Those are the only two things I can think of that matter about it. Everything else doesn't matter. So every time they do this, I'm always like, oh, well, like nobody cares, but that's happening. We'll call it a win. A study has linked COVID injections to increased cancer risk, including breast and prostate cancer, surprising only the people who weren't paying attention. This is yet another study, this time from South Korea, with 8 million people, 8.5 million people in the study. And it shows a huge increased risk. So that's massive, and it's maybe the biggest we've had yet, but all we've had is data that shows that the injections give you cancer, kill you, or ruin you in some other way, right? Give you lifelong disabilities. So quite unfortunate. We have more data now. The win is that we can share that data with people who might still be taking those. I know they exist. Can they hear us? Probably not. But there's the study for you just in case it helps. And otherwise, quite sad that this many people have been so harmed so intentionally. Trump's executive order on pediatric cancer, speaking of, unleashes AI to create a database of, quote, genetic information from children with cancer. AI czar David Sachs says, quote, we're going to get some miraculous cures out of this, end quote. Probably not. Maybe it is potentially possible. It is possible that AI can actually help. Well, sure. But what they're usually pushing with this so far, at least, is like AI is going to take your genome and then they're going to make an injectable mRNA gene editing technology just for you. And there is no way that I would ever inject that into myself for anything. I could be paralyzed and you could show me a bunch of other people receiving it and walking again, and I still wouldn't take it. Not take it. I would not take it, because there is no way of knowing what you're actually doing there. There's no way that I would know, since every vial would be different, every injection would be different. There'd be no way that I would know that you're not, for example, giving people injections based on their political or religious or, their philosophies, any of their orientations, in order to cripple their mind or something worse. So no, I would never trust any of this enough to inject it in myself. And if other people do, great. I wish them the best of luck. I genuinely hope it works out for them. I won't be joining them. So call it a win if you want. I don't. Bomb squad detonates a suspicious device at Utah State University prior to a Turning Point USA event. It seems like it may have been unrelated. It wasn't even in the same area or building that the Turning Point event was. It was on the same day. So maybe that person was dumb, smart enough to get a explosive device together, stupid enough to not know where to put it. I don't know. There's not a lot more on this. But yeah, they took care of it. No one was hurt. The event moved forward. So if it was an attempt to derail the event, it didn't work. I think it's just making people more and more brave. People want to come out and talk even more now since the Charlie Kirk assassination. TPUSA's got even more people involved in it. And so very interesting, right? That this has not only not squashed conversation, not stopped the discussions from happening, but also has seemed to embolden people to have even more conversation. So I'm pretty proud of people and the response of that terrorism, whoever carried it out. And speaking of that, I've been pretty non-impressed by most of the conspiracy theories around the Charlie Kirk thing. Like, so not impressed that I've become deeply disturbed at what I've been noticing for years, but has become like concretized in the Charlie Kirk aftermath of how very, again, that myopic that we were talking about, that myopia that we were talking about, you just see what you want to see and you don't go outside the bubble and you don't investigate. And like, this was what we used to criticize people in religions and people on the right or the left or any sort of cult-like behavior. But now I see it ever more clearly in the supposedly alternative thinking or conspiracy, outside of the box community, more than anywhere else. It's really disgusting. And so and people have kind of come back at me like, oh, you don't know that like the government does things? And I'm like, yeah, I probably knew before you did. People ask me like, what woke you up? And I'm like, my dad, when I was 5, literally telling me, you don't trust the media and you don't trust the government. The end. Like, I've never not been awake. I have gone the wrong direction in my thinking. I have made mistakes in committing myself to certain things before I realized the flaw. That's true. And that I see happening to everybody else, especially with this. So people were like, people still don't know, for example, that there is nowhere official where they tell us what gun was used. But people will tell you they know it's this gun. Okay, how do you know? They're like, here's a picture. Okay, the picture was never released from anywhere official. So where'd you get the picture? No one knows where the picture came from. Everybody's using the picture. Nobody knows where. Nobody knows what the picture's even of. And they're like, the scope's wrong and it's in a box. I'm like, yeah, that's because you don't even know what. It's just a picture of a gun, dude. Literally an unrelated gun. Still, that's going around. People are like, look at this angle and this angle and this angle, and this proves that the shooter was here and that there was 5 shooters, there's 10 shooters, there's 100 shooters, like all these things, and none of them have any evidence at all. And you look at the video and you're like, I don't know what you are seeing. I don't see how this proves anything. There's some really good questions, right? There's the shirt poof, and there's the like, where's the exit wound? And there's like these sorts of things. And even those, I'm like, sure, but the way you then just leap from there to somewhere else is ridiculous. To ask the question is not harmful. To therefore pretend you know the answer to it is ridiculous. And that's like all I've seen in this whole community this whole time until I saw this video. And this video is literally the only one that makes me even wonder if this is actually what happened instead of someone sniping from afar, which again is a completely easy shot to take. I am not looking for an alternative hard. I am always open to it, and I like asking questions, and I love seeing evidence. But I don't need to look hard for other opportunity, because that opportunity was there and it exists and it is totally plausible and possible, completely possible. People are like, yeah, but the bullet that was used would have ripped his face apart. Like, you don't know what bullet was used. You don't know. Nobody does. Somebody does, but it hasn't been released yet. Oh, one more I'll throw on the fire while I'm hot is this Dairy Queen thing. People are like, look at this video of this Dairy Queen. It's empty. Okay, that might be the Dairy Queen that Tyler was supposedly in. Sure. Can you show me anything that says officially where that Dairy Queen supposedly was what its address was? And then prove to me that right there is this empty Dairy Queen. I see a guy in something that looks like it's a Dairy Queen that isn't finished yet and hasn't opened yet. And that's it. I don't know anything. Like, I can't find any official statement on the address of the Dairy Queen that he was supposedly in. And so why would I care if some guy just took a video of a Dairy Queen that's empty? It doesn't mean anything. You have to also prove to me that's actually the place that was said to have been. So none of this has even made a lick of sense, but it has given people fodder for their myopia to continue and deepen. It's given them this like big chest and this like, oh, well, this is what happens every time. It's the same. I'm like, maybe it is, but like, we don't know. And here is the only video I've seen that has a good question to ask. And this is a video that seems to show the lavalier exploding and projecting something up and through Charlie Kirk's neck, which would also explain the shirt poof and, you know, why the wound was sort of strange if it was. And I'm not gonna, well, I'll show it because it doesn't actually show anything disgusting. And so I'll just play it here. Oh, and then it just goes on with stuff that I don't care about. Anyways, it goes into the security group and who it was and whatever and other things. And that's interesting too, but that's been there the whole time. And it doesn't actually, it's like, it's possibly a part of an equation if all of the other things also end up being, you know, questionable. But again, right now, nobody knows anything. They're just talking. So, so I won't show you the video, I guess, but if you want to go look for lavalier exploding or lavalier Charlie Kirk, you can watch it yourself and see. It is an interesting take. It is a potentially real take. It does seem to show 2 of his security guards possibly removing the lavalier and running off with it. So, and that is strange. But I also, again, I don't know, you know, what security people do. Maybe there is someone who runs off and does something right after someone gets shot. Like, it's, you know, it's not my job. I'm not well versed enough to know exactly what would go down. But the exploding lavalier thing is interesting to me because especially Israel has used exploding pagers, has given Donald Trump a golden pager, seemingly as a threat, in my opinion, and has also seemingly threatened all of Congress by saying, you know, the phone in your pocket, you know, Israel's in there. We're there with you wherever you are. And that seems like a threat to me. And it seems like Israel, for some reason, has the ability to explode random devices and thereby perhaps kill their targets. And so a lavalier could potentially fall under that category. So this is the most interesting thing I've heard and seen about the Charlie Kirk assassination that may point towards anyone, and maybe Israel, since they seem to like to do that sort of thing. So yeah, there's part of it that's sort of silly to me as well. There's the guy that people were at first saying like had a gun in his arm and why does he touch his arm, and he's like shooting him from his arm, and I'm like, I think that's like a big stretch. He's just a guy touching his arm. Like, you don't see a gun, you don't see an explosion, you don't see a projectile leaving. Like, there's no reason to point at this guy in the first place for me. But now people are saying that guy was detonating the lavalier. And the lavalier is his little microphone, by the way, if I've been saying this whole time and you're like, what the hell is a lavalier? The microphone you pin onto your lapel. And that guy doesn't need to be hitting a detonator either. He might be, and that might be what happened. But like, we don't need a detonator guy for this theory to work. Like, Israel didn't have detonator guys running around when the pagers exploded. They just exploded them from afar. Like, you don't have to be right next to something. We're not in the 80s where remote control needs like this distance to be gapped, you know? So anyways, that's the only interesting thing I've heard, really. I shared it on my Twitter. You can look into it. Please tell me any possible holes in it or any possible supporting information on it if you've got it. I would love to hear it. Also, if you can find the official release of either the exact address of the Dairy Queen and evidence that that is the one that we then see in a video that says that it's, you know, not even open, exactly the caliber used and the gun used. If you can get those and you can show me they exist, I will be very grateful, because I can't, and no one I have talked to yet can. No one can. So let me know. Let me know if you get there. I would love it. Milo is back. Yapanopoulos, or whatever his last name is. He's back. The gay Jewish conservative that everyone hates because he's gay and Jewish, so he's harder to attack. He says at least one person at Turning Point USA, someone close to Charlie, isn't a fan of Brylan. Brylan is the new head of Turning Point USA. You know, he claims to be kind of a self-starter out of nowhere, and you know, he's so honored, and other people are like, oh, he's like had money his whole life and he is being promoted on purpose and he's a big Israel stooge. So interesting. Brylan is now the guy for Turning Point USA. So, you know, is it questionable? I don't know. I had to go to someone. Like, I'm not big on the Turning Point USA like hierarchy. I don't know anything about who maybe like should have received this position, but you know, there's at least people who are never going to let Brylan out of their sight now because of all of this. So good or bad, like that's his fate. There it is. And speaking of shootings and manipulations of the public, someone points out, this is Duke of Milan on Twitter, and he says Michigan, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, these are all swing states, all with shooting incidents within 24 hours. Let's see if the shooter is also a veteran. So it seemed like we all of a sudden had these 3 shootings. I can't even remember. It's like Utah, Maine, and Pennsylvania. So I don't remember what states they were in, but they're all swing states, and they all seem to have shooters that could potentially be labeled as right-wing or Republican. The thing about it is, so here's one of them at least that has caught everyone's eye. And this is an Iraq War veteran, Thomas Sanford, who is identified as the gunman in the Utah Mormon church shooting and burning. He both crashed in, shot a bunch of people, and then set the place on fire. And he's definitely a Republican and an Army veteran, a hunter, and all the things that the left hates most. And he hates the Mormon church deeply. So this was not a political act of violence. So people have been like, see, the right is violent. And it's like, okay, like everyone's potentially violent, but who's actually committing political violence? And Steven Crowder's been doing a great Change My Mind. He's brave. He's going out and doing more Change My Minds on college campuses. And his is, that the left is politically violent and that the right isn't really. And he's not wrong. This is not political violence. And so he's been pointing this out. You have to agree with him. This is religious violence. This doesn't matter if the person is Republican or Democrat. Republicans and Democrats commit crimes that are non-political every day, right? But we're talking about political violence or political tyranny or political, I meant to say terrorism. That's what we're talking about. And this is not that. This is a guy who hated the Mormon church. It's a religious murder. It's a religious arson. And it doesn't matter, therefore, what his party was. And if we're having this conversation about like who's violent, who's politically violent, who's terrorists, right? Then it's by far the left. So very interesting that. So it does seem perhaps like, you could look at it and say, oh, that's weird. A bunch of potentially right-wing, like white, like people all of a sudden have these shootings in these swing states. But I actually just think, people are unhinged right now. They're really unsettled and things are hard and stressful and overwhelming. I'm not giving them excuses. I'm just saying that is usually what happens when we find tensions being sort of like ramped up, right? Economically and like health-wise, and just like, it gets overwhelming and we see more murders and we see more muggings and we see more arsons and we just do. People just break. So I think it's more that than anything else. And I don't necessarily think these were all false flags. But the left is continuing to ramp up on the violent rhetoric. And here's something that, the right will fight for the left's right to do this. And this is a man in Texas who displayed 2 mannequins, who are white mannequins, by the way, with red hats, hanging from the gallows for Halloween with a Mexican flag above. So there's a Mexican flag above 2 white people with red hats. They also have masks on for some reason, like COVID masks. They have zip ties in their pants and they're wearing like khakis, almost like a uniform. Very, very violent and aggressive, obviously political. This guy was interviewed and he's like, oh, I'm just saying, like, there's things happening in the world that aren't right. We have to speak out against it. And they're like, yeah, but are you saying something about like Republicans or conservatives or MAGA? And he's like, no, it's just 2 people hanging. Like, you're so dishonest, dude. And this is like, again, more often on the left, we see this level of dishonesty. Like, at least claim it. Like, yeah, I'm hanging Trump supporters. That's what this is. Deal with it. Like, claim it. Don't be a pussy. If you're going to do it, be a big boy and say what you mean. We know what you mean, and that's what you mean. And you know that we know what you mean. And you mean for it to be silencing, and you mean for it to be forceful. You mean for it to take people's right to be themselves away from them. You mean it like you wish they actually were dead. And so when the left says, we don't have a violent rhetoric, yeah, well, yeah, you do. Not all of you, but so much of your base does, and so much of your base feels like this is okay and isn't violent, that it's just dishonest, it's narcissistic, it's psychopathic, and it's disturbing. So not cool. Cool to call people like that out. I'm glad the news went and like tried to talk to him about it. Shaming people and bringing attention to their failures is the only way that they start to understand their failures. No, it's not a bad choice. But speaking of violent rhetoric on the left, a new DiCaprio film was brought up by Charlie, again, my co-host on Day Zero this past Sunday. He went to see it without knowing anything about it. And he was like, this was one of the stupidest, longest, most boring, and also most disturbing movies I've ever seen. He said it was like a leftist's wet dream of like what they wish would happen, right? It's called One Battle After Another. And it glorifies left-wing terrorists. And it's like a bunch of like low-life, weird leftist people who are like getting together to overthrow like what the left's view of right-wing people, which is that they're just all racist, misogynist, like cultists or whatever. So I don't want to see it, but I kind of do, because I kind of want to know like just how ridiculous has it gotten. But I think I can imagine, based on Charlie's description, and if you haven't heard it, go listen to Day Zero this past Sunday. It's worth your time. But super stupid, dude. I want to know anyone who likes this film. I want to know why I would like to hear an assessment of like what they like about it, because I bet it's just as dishonest as the guy who was hanging mega voters in his yard. Oh, a judge finds a Trump admin unconstitutionally targeted non-citizens over the Gaza war protests. I didn't know the Constitution covered non-citizens, so I don't agree with him. But otherwise, I do agree that people's free speech should be protected. My understanding was they were targeting people who might actually have connections to monetized, organized terrorist groups and or had committed violence in the name of their political beliefs, and that would be okay with me to deport those people as well. So that's happening. Again, it might be a win for free speech. It might be a misinterpretation of what the Constitution covers and who was actually affected, or why they were so-called targeted. So I know that's like a hard one for people who are pro-Palestine to analyze, because they want to just say like anybody who's pro-Palestine should be able to do whatever they want, but it's not actually true. It doesn't actually matter what you're what it is you're speaking for. Like your actions matter, and whether or not you're connected monetarily to actual terrorist groups, whether they should have been designated that or not, that's another question. But like in the moment, if that's true, that's right, we have to have some sort of structure and law and justice, ideally. And so we have to also interpret it neutrally. And so, yeah, I don't know. You'd have to look into that deeper, perhaps. But on the face of it, I don't agree with him, and we'll see where that goes. I'm sure it will be appealed. I'm almost positive this will go to the Supreme Court, but we'll see. Italy's Navy was going along with Greta and her flotilla to Palestine, speaking of Palestine, and they said they'll cease escorting the flotilla to not risk international incident, as they put it. So I was kind of like, wow, that's really bold. I can't believe they're doing that. But now I'm like, oh, I mean, that's cool. They got some brownie points from people for doing it, and now they're just going to go home and leave Greta. I actually think Greta and them have already been intercepted again, but I didn't see specifically anything about that, so I'm not sure. But speaking of Gaza, we've got a Gaza Strip proposal from Donald Trump. It consists of 20 specific points. It's aimed at achieving a ceasefire, the return of Israeli hostages, dismantling Hamas's military capabilities, and establishing a transitional governance structure in the Gaza Strip. Trump stated that the agreement was contingent on Hamas's approval. And so, yeah, did they just list the 20 points? Here we go. Gaza will be de-radicalized, terror-free zone. Gaza will be redeveloped for the benefit of the people of Gaza who have suffered more than enough. I mean, I agree with that, and that'd be really cool if that's what happens, but I'll believe it when I see it. If you're going to develop this and they actually get to stay there and can afford it and can thrive there, That's beautiful. I would love that. It's just, I don't believe you. So we'll see. If both sides agree to the proposal, the war will immediately end. Within 72 hours, Israel publicly accepts this agreement. All hostages will be returned. Once they're released, Israel will release 250 life sentence prisoners plus 1,700 Gazans who were detained after October 7th. My God. Yeah, I hope so. It's crazy. And for every Israeli hostage whose remains are released, Israel will release the remains of 15 deceased Gazans. It's dark. Once all hostages are returned, Hamas members who commit to peaceful coexistence and to decommission their weapons will be given amnesty. Wow. Members of Hamas who wish to leave Gaza will be provided safe passage. That's cool. Upon acceptance of this agreement, full aid will be sent to Gaza Strip. Entry of distribution and aid in the Gaza Strip will proceed without interference. Gaza will be governed under the temporary transitional governance of technocratic apolitical Palestinian Committee. They literally put technocratic in there. So I remember hearing this. Some lady was reading it on the radio, and I was like, did she just say technocratic? Like without even, so nobody's even like, ugh, they don't care. They're not, this is an ironic, like, just, yeah, it's technocratic. Okay, non-political technocratic Palestinian Committee. And so it'll be made up of Palestinians, international experts, with oversight by a new international transitional body, the Board of Peace. Totally not weird at all. Which will be headed and chaired by Donald J. Trump. Ooh, so Antichrist vibes. Oh, all right, it's getting exciting, guys. With other members and heads of state to be announced, including Tony Blair. Oh, he's very Antichrist energy too. Wow. That is blowing my mind. I haven't read the points until I'm here live on air with you guys, so. Okay, so that's point 9, by the way. If you're going through the list, you want to get to the Technocratic Board of Peace with Donald J. Trump at its helm, like just skip to 9. A Trump economic development plan will rebuild and energize Gaza. A specific economic zone will be established, preferred tariff and access rates to be negotiating with participating countries. No one will be forced to leave Gaza, and those who wish to leave will be free to do so and free to return. They'll encourage people to stay and offer them the opportunity to build a better Gaza. I mean, really, if that's true, then great. Your weird technocratic Board of Peace thing is super sus. Like, whatever. Guarantee will be provided by regional partners to ensure that Hamas and the factions comply with their obligations. The United States will work with Arab and international partners to develop a temporary international stabilization force. So like a military, right? Israel will not occupy or annex Gaza. Israel Defense Forces will withdraw. Practically, the IDF will progressively hand over the Gaza territory it occupies back to the the Gaza development zone, whatever they're going to call it. So they're actually going to give territory back if this goes forward. They've agreed to this, supposedly. In the event Hamas delays or rejects the proposal, then they will proceed to just destroy everyone and everything. An interfaith dialogue process will be established based on the values of tolerance. So that'd be great, again, if that actually happened. While Gaza redevelopment advances, the conditions may finally be in place for a credible pathway to Palestinian self-determination and statehood. The U.S. will establish a dialogue between Israel and Palestinians to agree on a political horizon for peaceful and prosperous coexistence. I mean, again, cool. All of that, if it's actually real and they actually do it that way, and Gazans and Palestinians can actually stay and be healthy and well and have their home back and even get some of their territory back, get these like 2,000 some people back and who knows what else, like, great. I can't imagine much better. I'm not going to let go of that technocratic peace board weird shit. That's going to be like primary and what I'm watching for as this moves forward, if it does. So I do hope for peace. I do hope Hamas or the CIA via Hamas accepts this, and that'd be great. We'll see what happens. So it's possible huge win, possibly mixed in with some weird one world government antichrist stuff. So we'll see. But again, peace in the Middle East, one of the requirements for the Antichrist. So Netanyahu says if Hamas rejects your plan, or if they supposedly accept and then basically do everything to counter it, Israel will finish the job by itself, is what Netanyahu says. So God bless possible peace there. While Netanyahu was addressing the United Nations, almost everybody walked out. This was before that peace plan was proposed, actually. And you know, a lot of countries are trying to recognize Palestine as a state. They're seeing Israel as war criminal, and it's actually quite heartening to see that many people walk out in solidarity with Palestine and against the war criminal Netanyahu. And you know, so that's really beautiful. Is it enough? Well, you know, whatever. But it's like maybe what you can do. You do what you can do. And it's got to be deeply embarrassing to this man, which I love, to talk to a room full of like 12 people that should have been hundreds of people. You can see here just how sparse it was. So gotta love it. We'll call it a win. It's pretty cool. And so we'll move on to a little bit more international outside of that narrow strip of the world. A former NATO chair, Bauer, has warned that if Europe is completely dependent on China for all the raw materials for renewable energy, and Xi closes the valve of those raw materials, we will not have light, no heating, and we will not drive, and we will have no production at all. Yeah, I'm glad someone who has some level of potential power is saying what I've been saying for like 20 years of my life. God. It is a nightmare scenario to not have energy independence. It's a nightmare scenario to not have overall independence. And while it's cool to be in trade with places, including China, if you want to, it is not cool to be so deeply dependent on them for anything. In this case, what we most recently saw was being dependent on them for our health care, for our hospital supply, for our medications, right? To say nothing of our energy infrastructure was a nightmare. So, yeah, I hope people like him continue to point out that we have let China get far too embedded within our infrastructure and our logistics to be comfortable. And so hopefully we pull back from that and get our energy independence back. Again, like I said, it's right there. We can do it anywhere at any time. We've got all the technology we need and we've got all the money to do it. We just have to do it. So good to hear. We'll call it a win. Classified U.S. intelligence warns of China's preparations for Taiwan invasion. Speaking of China wanting to take over the world, Taiwan, of course, is where we get most of our chips. And so we've been protecting Taiwan. It's, you know, essential for the AI race. It's essential for our modern life that we have those. And so we don't have independence in that arena. And that's exactly the type of situation we were just pointing out is the worst to be in. And this is why, because now if we want to keep that, we might have to go into a hot war with China, which, you know, I would assume in a war. So war is never what you want. It's never the right outcome. It doesn't serve the people. And so we can do better than this, and hopefully we will. Speaking of energy independence, Iran and Russia are signing a $25 billion deal to build 4 nuclear plants in Iran. Iran deserves to have their nuclear energy too. Everywhere should. And so I'm for it. Call it a win. Back home in the U.S., Hegseth uses a rare meeting of generals to announce new military standards. It was pretty cool to see snippets of this. If you're a fan of getting rid of DEI and getting rid of the woke agenda, pretty satisfying. You know, saying they're bringing back the standards for women. You no longer have a lower standard than the men. If you're going to be in combat positions, you could still be in the military in all kinds of positions. But if you're going to be in a combat position, you have to pass rigorous standards. Who wouldn't want that? I am deeply disappointed that we have women on the police force who can't meet those standards. For that fact, we have men too who can't. So like that we have anybody who can't is deeply disturbing to me. And so I'm really glad if we bring that back. You know, they're getting rid of all of the support of trans people in the military. And so lots of good stuff coming out of that. They also made it pretty clear, like, if you're not with this agenda, like, you'll find yourself without a job. So get with it. And I think that's important to have in a military organization is unity and loyalty. So I like it myself. Call that a win. He's officially ordered as well, Pete Hegseth, the National Guard troops to Portland for the next 60 days. This was a week ago or so. Federal agents began making arrests of Antifa militants in Portland. Law and order is coming to the great state of Oregon. They're saying Title 10 has been invoked. National Guard will be rolling in. You can see all the chaos that has rolled out in Portland. It's been that way for years. It's not like all of Portland is just in war. I've been in Portland. It's not anywhere you're at. Even when there's war, you're not going to always just be in the war zone. But it's definitely been hot and heavy in Portland for years. And nobody's been doing anything about it. So it's emboldening people to do more and more and more and more. And so now they're going in and taking care of it. And I call that a win. Many people don't. I do. And here, for example, just like Washington, D.C.'s residents thanked the National Guard and the troops for cleaning up D.C., Chicago residents are thanking the National Guard for coming in and cleaning up Chicago. And some of Portland is also going to be grateful. There are even going to be leftists who won't admit how grateful they are to have had Portland cleaned up. So don't let it, the propaganda and the media mouthpieces fool you into thinking that people don't want this. They do. There are people who don't, but there are lots of people who do. So, people should be allowed to and able to feel safe in their homes, in their cities, in their towns, in their communities. And so I support it. It's good. Call it a win. Regulators are weighing $1 billion utilities takeover as bills rise for consumers. This is what I was talking about earlier. If we don't put that $13 billion they want to give back to the taxpayers for, overpaying into the green new scam, as they called it on the Department of Energy.gov page, this is what we would put it into, those nuclear reactors, so that private equity giants like BlackRock and Blackstone won't drive up our power bills. They're taking all the energy for AI. For computing, for data storage and cloud storage. And it's been this way for a while, but it's getting worse with the rampant uptick in AI. And so we need these power solutions as soon as possible so that people like you and I don't have to pay 6 times our power bill just to have some energy. These giants shouldn't even be allowed to do this. They have enough money actually to build their own mini nuclear reactors, so they should be powering this themselves. And maybe if more people understood this and talked about it, we would get some accountability on that side, and that'd be the best way to go. So let's keep it in our mind. Let's talk to people about it, and let's promote that exact solution. You're rich enough. You stole everyone's houses and whatever, BlackRock, so you buy your mini nuclear reactors. You take care of your own electricity and energy needs. But maybe I'm creating a monster if that's true, because we need them all at the same time. We can't have a big, lack of equity in between the energy access, right? So let's all get some. Let's use the $13 billion for good. Trump is doing tariffs on movies. If you make a movie for a United States company, makes a movie outside of the US, there's 100% tariff on that. So no longer will all these other countries get those dollars. You'll be wanting to film in the United States now. That will serve your interest better. I think it's a good call. Take it. Call it a win. This is also interesting and a win. A Sumitomo Mitsui Banking Corporation is going to make a 1-month paternity leave mandatory. Paternity leave. So maternity leave is already guaranteed. Now you also have paternity leave, and you won't be able to not take it. So in Japan, there's a lot of overworking. There's a lot of sacrificing, staying long hours, and people aren't having babies anymore. And there's all sorts of economic reasons for that. So Japan's working really hard to bring baby making back. And this is a way to do it. And they couldn't just say, here, you have paternity leave, because they wouldn't take it, because they'd want to make the ranks and move up in the business and make more money. So they have to force them to take it. And that also guarantees they're not punished for it. They won't lose out on opportunities, right? They'll just, be honored for being parents. So hopefully that works. Hopefully that's a win for creating more babies in Japan. Hopefully we can all continue to create babies together in the world. But Japan has also had rampant immigration problems and the threat of more weaponized immigration. And here in the US, we see that as well. In Dearborn, Michigan, the chief of police has praised Allah in Arabic and has boasted that the police force is being replaced with Arabs. I don't know if this is the same police force that also made their like coat of arms or symbol an Arabic script and symbol, but it probably is. This is also the place where apparently they're playing the call to prayer, which I find beautiful when you're in the Middle East. But when you're in Dearborn, Michigan, and you're being woken up at 3 a.m., 4 a.m. for the call to prayer, that's pretty intrusive. And this is, I think, also the place, maybe it's somewhere else, but where the mayor was brought to his attention, you know, that this call to prayer was happening and that some other things, and there was a street named after like an Islamic terrorist or something, that things were basically seeming to get a bit anti-Western in their town. And the mayor told him, oh, we don't want you here anyway, leave. They're like, this is our town and this is our place. So here's another example of radical Islam, in my opinion, very intentionally taking over power and space. That's the aim of the religion. You can't say the same of Christianity. It was once true, and then the New Testament superseded it, and it is no longer true. And you can't say the same of well, maybe, yeah, you could say the same of some other religions like Judaism, but Islamic is the most weaponized of them all, right? And the most militant of them all. So now we're seeing it here in the US as well. Pretty interesting stuff. Hopefully people take back their city. Speaking of immigration, it accounts for 98% of the UK's population growth. 98%. And so that's enough on that. I think they've had enough of it, speaking of. But think of it as good or bad, a win or not. It's really up to you and where you're at with the technological revolution. But physicists have demonstrated a 3,000 quantum bit system capable of continuous operation. You can see the infrastructure around these people and see how insane it is. It's like we're building the veins and bones of a large world-spanning electronic beast, which you can read more about in my trilogy, my fictional trilogy, Sine Curve of Aeons, which you can get on Audible, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, or from my site with a channeled inscription from the spiritual ancestors for you. And so, yeah, we'll just leave that where it's at. You might not know what a 3,000 quantum bit system capable of continuous operation is, but it's insane. And if you followed me at all through the Robocalypse warnings and the technocratic warnings, and you know, when I used to be deathly afraid of AI and tearing apart all of that, we'll just say, like, this is the most insane access to interdimensional intelligences that we've had so far. Pretty intense. And almost done here. The FBI did have 274 plainclothes agents embedded in the January 6th crowds. Duh. I said it before it happened. I said it while it was happening. I've been saying it since it happened. And I'm vindicated with this evidence that that is exactly what was happening. Not because I'm psychic, although that's true too, but just because anyone who's been paying attention any point in their life knows that's what happens at political events. So Donald Trump says in a tweet on Truth Social, that the American people deserve to know what these law enforcement officials and agents were doing. Were they inciting the crimes that supposedly happened? Were they pushing people to do this? Yeah, of course they were. But he's just saying in a nice way, like, we need to know that so that we can call it out. Which, again, if you hate him, cool. But like, that's cool. That's a cool thing to say and do. And it's a win in my book. So that is the winning report. Those are the wins. And if you're keeping your eyes open, if you're asking questions about things, if you are only using evidence to draw your conclusions, if you don't need conclusions, but you can just sit with the absolute abundance of being unsure, then that's a win. You don't have to decide things for sure. The people who do aren't as smart as the people who don't. It is literally an indicator of intelligence. So try to do it more often. And until you do, travel well, aim for balance, and always look inside first. Mwah.
Glued to them screens, it's a plot to drop the IQ. Fighting amongst each other over rumors that don't like you. Prefer us trapped in melancholy with the wood ones, the holly suggestions that a flicker rates a Attempted mental robbery, executed sloppily. The hypocrisy, this mockery, and walk the talk with me. Put the hands up to touch the Akasha, cause you know deep down there's something bigger than your wallet.